Make no mistake about it. The real casualty in the continuing tensions between India and Canada is the blossoming friendship between India and the United States. That is the real story. It is not so much the damage to India's ties with Canada, a country, frankly, over which one would not even lose a night's sleep, but rather the fact that, in the immediate sense, relations with the United States have taken a bit of a hit. We can gloss over the fact that the statements of US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and their NSA Jake Sullivan over this issue are a ritualistic pep up for the Canadian government due to their Five Eyes alliance. But the US is merely and very carefully encouraging India to join in the investigations in the Nijjar murder case. Such an interpretation of these statements would be self delusional and entirely wrong. The United States has unambiguously declared which side they are taking, and the tone and tenor of these statements suggests that India has no choice but to cooperate with the Canadians in their so called investigations. That is the unvarnished reality of what has happened. And India is bristling at the reprimand. It is a very dangerous moment for Indo US ties. The situation is frankly far more serious than the Cobra Garde incident that rocked Indo US relations in 2013. I would even argue that the current situation is approaching close to the 1971 situation where President Nixon sent the US 7th Fleet to the Bay of Bengal to intimidate India. Such was the reaction in India that it took 35 years for relations to be normalized between both countries. The visit of President George Bush to India in 2006 broke the ice. What really is shocking is that the public censuring of India by the US comes less than a month of the success of the G20 summit in Delhi, where the United States endorsed India on countless new initiatives and projects. President Biden and our Prime Minister were seen holding hands and enjoying each other's company, as only friends of old would do. And then, cut to the present, in which Jake Sullivan admonishes India. And the savage irony of this censuring is this: Jake Sullivan is the same man who single handedly worked tirelessly behind the scenes to forge the path breaking Quad relationship with India. And all this happened over this trash of a human being called Nijjar, who has been seen by all and sundry parading around with an assault rifle threatening India. What is leading the United States down this path? I will explain all that in a minute. But first, a warm welcome to all viewers of the CAA show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. To watch this podcast, press the big red subscriber button on your screen, and subscription is, of course, completely free. Two occurrences have resulted in the fallout of the American conveyance of displeasure against India. The first is that the army of India baiters and haters, both within the country and abroad, have been unleashed with unusual ferocity. Let me give you a purview of their campaign. Karan Thapar of The Wire, who at the best of time operates like a foreign agent and less like an Indian citizen, in show after show has been putting forward the twisted Canadian point of view and asking his guests, rather prodding them, when will the United States act against India on this issue? And in lockstep with the views of this abomination of an anchor, a so-called India-friendly analyst like Michael Kugelman, who show their true face when they suggest that the US displeasure is a warning to India not to try anything similar against US citizens in that country. He's, of course, referring to characters like Pannu, who in popular imagination are in the roles of the CIA. The Economist, in its lead story, goes to the extent of saying, What should the West do of its problem that is the Prime Minister of India? The reporting by the New York Times and the Washington Post is on similar lines, where all these Western media interlocutors are busy picking holes in the Indian argument. To summarize, all these media outfits probably are fed background information provided by the State Department and Western intelligence agencies that are making the distinction that the US is tolerating India not on a shared value based system, but on a no choice interest based system. Values are the preserve, it seems, only of white Anglo-Saxon genuine democracies like Canada. Interests come to play because these countries need India as bulwark against China. The cynicism of these arguments is not lost on India. And India, for the first time in its history, is responding with utter ruthlessness, calmness, and dexterity to these provocations. Till now, the utterances of the Canadian Prime Minister and the US Secretary of State and the NSA have been met with official responses from an Indian bureaucrat, only of the rank of Joint Secretary. That is India's way of downsizing the Western argument. The heart of the problem lies in parity. What are we comparing with what? We have given enough notice to Western democracies that the Khalistan elements in their countries are out to create trouble in India, especially in Punjab. Hundreds and thousands of people have been killed in that state due to past separatist and extremist sentiments. We do not want a flare-up of that old problem once again. But the West, by and large, chooses to ignore our concerns. They go a step further and give protection to rabid extremists like Pannu. And now they have elevated a low-life, third-rate thug, come gangster, come terrorist, Nijjar, who was served his just desserts in gang warfare to the level of a political activist and a martyr. This is the level of parity the West chooses to impose on us. But the world has changed so inexorably that perhaps only some in the West are still left clutching to straws of the old world order. India is not a rising power. It has already risen. Its usage is not only as a bulwark against China. It is the place to be in terms of exciting human innovation, profound progress, infrastructure development, social engineering to usher in equity, military prowess, and above all, an inspiring faith in its young population to lead the world by their energy and intelligence and innovation. Such a place is India today. But those who oppose it will be left by the wayside. Be it an irrelevant country of 40 million people like Canada, 90% of it useless, cold forest and desert, or even the powers of old who think they can raise a din of 70s style rhetoric to browbeat India. The day is coming when perhaps India will on its own hold a new inquiry into the role of the people and the organizations that planted a bomb on the Air India airliner Kanishka. People will be held responsible for that beastly, inhuman act of terror. Maybe the role and name of Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, will be exhumed from its resting place and he be held responsible in large part for the miscarriage of justice in that case. Believe me, nothing is off the table for a resurgent India. And so, on this note, I come to the end of this episode of the CAA Show. I hope you really enjoyed this particular episode. You like our show, do subscribe to us. And on this note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.